Okay, I got it.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. Okay,
Awesome.
now we're recording and I'll shush my own self, but just wanted to introduce you guys to Chris, another fellow trainer and nutritionist, and he's gonna, I'll let him kind of take the floor, but he's gonna talk to us about goal setting. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'm gonna monitor kind of like the Facebook side of things, and you guys can either raise your hand or unmute or add it in the chat. But he'll kind of just share some cool stuff about making goal setting a little bit easier and give us some tips and tricks. So have at it, Chris. Floor is yours.
Right. Hello, I am Chris Hughes. Two things right off the bat. I'm a theater kid, so if I'm very animated with my hands, that's why. I talk with my hands a lot. And secondly, I'm getting crushed by allergies right now. So if you see me going like that a lot, it's me trying my hardest not to just have it turn into a faucet live on camera. With that being said, cool. Yeah, like I said, my name's Chris. Obviously, grew up a theater kid. I grew up kind of a bit of an overweight kid, and growing up, and then back in 2010, this kind of gets to know where how who I am and kind of who I like to work with, who I talk to. In 2010, my mom passed away to very preventable health reasons, very preventable health conditions. And that's kind of when I started going down the rabbit hole of I like coaching moms. My whole thing is that I find women's health is so underdeveloped, unknown, undiagnosed. It kind of gets swept under the rug, even at the highest level. And so I started deep diving into women's health, specifically perimenopause, menopause, and later. And my whole thing is I want to help families, but I like working with moms and helping them live long, stronger, healthier lives through nutrition, fitness, stuff like that, so that they can create more meaningful memories with their loved ones. Because my mom isn't going to be there at my wedding at the end of this month. She's not going to be able to experience being a grandchild. So like that's kind of the whole thing. That's kind of where the direction I'm kind of going with my work. And I just kind of like wanted to give a heads up, like that's where I'm coming from. Those are the kind of people that I tend to speak with. So today I wanted to talk mostly about goal setting, which is kind of a very broad term. But so I want to talk about goal setting from like a 360 view. I think when people set goals, a lot of the times they look only ahead. Here's what I want. And when getting what they want is too difficult, or they hit a plateau, or they hit an obstacle, they have a tendency to, it's really easy. Human beings are very good at justifying that the in the moment pain is not as bad as the pain we left behind. So as soon as we hit frustrations, as soon as we hit walls and obstacles, it's really easy for us to be like, you know what, I'm just going to go back. And the way I like to explain it is like, think of it like we're going through a road trip, right? Where we have a destination, but say we're going through a different country and a really big city in a different country, right? But you see the destination, you see the big resort that you're going for, and as you're driving down the road, you see, oh look, there's construction going on. Okay, so now you're and this is the obstacle. You see the destination, you know what it is you're going, but as you hit this roadblock, you look around and you're like, oh, there's a 6-way intersection right there. What is that about? Thousands of pedestrians. There's a people, you're driving on the wrong side of the road. Freaking Europe. Right. And so there's all these things that are confusing. And I mean, confusion is at an all-time high. Stress is at an all-time high. Stress builds up. You go into panic mode and you go like, you know what? Just going to go home and I'm going to do this. I'm going to try again tomorrow, or I'm going to try again on Monday. Seems to be the thing, the running theme with a lot of diets and stuff like that. So I'm going to start again on Monday. And I think the reason why it's so easy to turn around and go back is because, again, you have this kind of thing where it's the pain we left behind is in the past. It's distant memory. And so the pain and frustration and panic you're feeling now, it's really easy to be like, it's not worth it. I'm going back home. And so what I like to talk about is, yes, it's really important to look ahead, understand who it is we want to become. And I like talking about like get really intimately close with that person you want to be. I think one of the most powerful tools we can have is really dissect what we want and go, okay, how does that person, like, say what your ideal future self, your ideal healthy version of you, list everything that that person does. How do they live? How do they talk? How do they eat? How do they talk to themselves? How do they treat others? Are they sleeping better? They're probably less stressed. They probably drink more water. They probably walk more. All these things. Write down a list of everything that you could possibly know about this ideal, healthy future self, and become really good friends with that person, because it's just you. It's just you, but in the future, right? So know that person inside and out. Understand what you want to be true about yourself, and just write it all down. Because now it's more than just, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. Because a lot of the times when I'm talking to anybody, I go, okay, what do you want? They go, I want to lose 30 pounds. Okay, so losing 30 pounds will make you happy. And they go, yes, fantastic. What if you lost that 30 pounds and nothing changed? You didn't look any better. You didn't feel any better. Would you still be happy? And they go, well, no, of course not. No. So it's not the number that you're chasing. The weight is not what matters. It's what you think losing that 30 pounds will bring to your life. Fantastic. What do you think those are? Well, that person probably sleeps better. When I lose 30 pounds, I'll probably be less stressed, less anxiety around food. I'll have more energy to play with my kids. I'll be walking more. I'll be drinking more water. I might have already said that. Eating more fruits and vegetables, stuff like that. And go, great. So you're still focusing solely on the outcome that you're chasing. You think losing 30 pounds will then create this for your life, when in reality, it's actually the opposite. Getting those things in order will gain you that 30-pound loss, which then begs the question, what if you can look better and feel better, but we only lose 15 pounds? What if you achieve all of those things, but we do it in 15 pounds rather than 30? Would you still be happy? Yeah, because you still achieved everything that you thought that 30 pounds would bring you, but you did it in less time with less effort. Fantastic. So getting really intimately close with who you want to become and what the actual outcome you want is, not just the arbitrary number, but what you think that number will bring to your life, and really dissect all of those things, because it's the things that will improve your life that creates that outcome to begin with anyway. It's kind of the same thing as, like, if you're only focusing on the goal, let's use Mount Everest. Like, say you're like, I'm going to go climb Mount Everest. What will be a better experience? Actually taking the time, setting yourself up for success, learning all the things you need to learn, doing all the things you need to do, climbing that mountain one step, one rock at a time. It sucks. It is going to be a life-changing experience. You'll never forget it. Or you can just hire a helicopter pilot and he'll just take you to the top and you can go up there and plant your flag. Yeah, the view is still the same. You're still reaching the same peak, the same goal, but I guarantee you'll forget that experience a month later if you just took the helicopter ride instead, because it's the journey that makes that destination worth achieving. Right? Another analogy I like to use is again going back to a road trip. Let's say that you're taking a road trip and you're that asshole that's just weaving in between all the vehicles, trying to speed ahead, right? You're just trying to race to your destination. And have you ever had somebody explain to you, be like, oh, you've got to try this new restaurant out. This new restaurant is amazing. 10 out of 10, 100%, 5 stars. And then you get there and you try it and it's like, at best. Yeah. That's at the end of the day, that's what the weight loss number feels like. You achieve it and you're like, great, now what? It's honestly not that great. However, now if you're going on that road trip and say you lived in the desert, right? You're going through on a road trip and you've never seen the ocean before. You've never seen trees before. You've never seen mountains before. If you just raced past all of those meaningful things, you're not going to be able to get to the restaurant and reminisce with your family about all the beautiful things that happened along the way. You're just going to get to the end and be like, oh, well, now what? And you're going to feel defeated. You're going to feel hollow and empty because all of the things that were going right, you just kind of ignored that because you were looking at the wrong scoreboard. You were ignoring the journey and you are fixated solely on the destination. So once we have an understanding of what we want and what the journey will look like to achieve what we want, fantastic. We're in a really good spot. Now the other side. We now know what we want to be true. But now we need to look at ourselves now, and we need to audit our own life and recognize what we no longer want to be true. So it's not just the thing we're chasing, but what are we trying to leave behind? Are you somebody who reaches for cookies when you're stressed because that's just how it goes? Maybe you were treated, maybe your parents when you were a kid rewarded you with Oreos as you were growing up. So now you think, oh, Oreos are a reward. That's what I go to feel good. And sometimes it is a childhood thing that dictates it. Sometimes it's just the fact that we're stressed and our body knows that carbohydrates will spike insulin, which drops cortisol, which are stress hormones. So sometimes, a lot of the times, people will be like, oh, I'm just stressed, so I want ice cream or chips or whatever it is. If you no longer want that to be true, write that down. If you want to be somebody, if you want to leave behind that stress response, if you know that you're somebody who stays up to 1 o'clock in the morning playing video games or watching TV or Netflix, and you're like, man, every time I do that, I wake up the next day and feel like absolute garbage. I want to leave that behind. Right? And just kind of start taking inventory of all the things you no longer want to be true. I'll use myself as an example, and it's a bit of a secondhand, a little bit of a not a direct experience, but for about 5 years, I was working at Starbucks and I hated it. I was stuck there, complacent. I got lazy. It was safe during COVID. Starbucks takes fantastic care of their employees. So it felt safe. And so it was really hard for me to leave. But a lot of the people that I worked with, I would look around and I would see other people complaining about everything, complaining that this, that, and the other thing. They're pointing their blame finger at all the things they're blaming their circumstances. They're blaming other people. And I was looking at them. I was like, you sound like you hate your life. I don't want that for myself. So I then started taking inventory and looking at myself and be like, okay, what am I complaining about right now that I can actually change? And again, I'm taking inventory of the things that I want to no longer be true from this. This is more of a personality and how I look at life kind of thing. But take inventory of the things you no longer want to be true about your current life, because now, let's say, as example, say somebody's in an abusive relationship. They get in they pack their car and they leave. And they hit a roadblock and they start panicking and they go, oh God, what am I doing? I don't know how to navigate this. This is scary. This is unknown. The biggest fear in the world is the fear of the unknown. I don't know what's beyond this point. This is terrifying. I'm just going to go back. But if they stop and go, no, that's an abusive relationship. I don't want that anymore. There's no way in hell I'm turning this car around and going back to where I came from, because I've taken inventory. I've gotten very close to all of the things I no longer want to be true. It is very clear and vivid in my mind. There's a personal reminder. It's taped to my fridge, wherever. It's something that I see on a daily basis where I'm like, man, I am struggling right now. And every fiber of my being is telling me to go back to what I was doing before, because this is hard. And then you read that list of all the things that you no longer want to be true. And you go, right, that's what I'm trying to leave behind. That's the person that would turn around and go back. I don't want to be that person. So instead, I'm going to figure out how to become this person. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take inventory of the current situation. I'm going to audit myself in this current situation. And instead of saying, I can't, I'm now going to reframe and say, how can I? And now your brain goes from this obstacle to then realizing the obstacle is actually only about that big, and you can just walk around. Because now you're in problem solving mode rather than fixating on the problem itself. And now you can navigate these situations better because you know exactly what you're trying to leave behind. You know exactly what you're trying to chase. Get this obstacle out of the way. If you can't move it yourself, just walk around it. Now, a lot of this kind of shifting into part two, I guess, is actually how do we do this? Because it's way easier said than done to just be like, yes, I'm going to go do the things. We have habitual creatures, right? We will always fall back to our level of preparation instead of rising to our goal when things get stressful. So how do we actually set ourselves up in a way to start actually being able to do those things and actually being able to take those things that that person does and start living it? The first thing we do is everyone's been in this situation where they have made way too many commitments in a single day. And by the time it hits like 3 o'clock in the morning, you're emotionally and mentally drained because it's such a busy day that you have to start canceling on people. You have to be like, "Okay, man, I'm sorry I have to cancel. I know we had plans tonight, but I am so exhausted. I just got to take the rest of the day off." And then you feel guilt and then you feel shame, kind of like when you don't keep your promises to yourself on a diet. You're like, I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to start doing walking 10K, meal prep on Sundays. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start doing that. Oh, but I'm also a single mom of 3, working a nurse as a night shift. Fantastic. Right. People take one of the biggest mistakes people make is they take on too much, too soon, too fast, and they can't commit to all of these things at once. So what do we do instead? Well, since we have this really convenient list of all the things that the ideal healthy version of you does, how they live their life, what you can do is pick one thing from that list, the easiest, most simplest thing in the world to do. Try to make sure it takes no more than 5 minutes, because the more time you have to commit to something, the harder and harder it is for you to stick to it. So pick the easiest thing in the world. It could be something as simple as, I bet that version of me drinks more water. So tonight, I'm gonna set a timer every night to go off and remind me to fill a glass of water and put it on my nightstand. So that the first thing I do in the morning is I grab that drink of water, slug it back, and there you go. I'm already committing to that ideal future self. And it took 30 seconds, not even. And it's something so simple and easy that it's like, oh, but it's too simple. It won't work. Here's the thing. Whenever I ask a group of people, hey, when was the last time you managed to completely overhaul your life in one go and not screwed up at all and actually sustain it for the rest of your life? No one puts up their hand. No one does, right? Fantastic. When was the last time you just picked 12 things? Which is still a lot. A lot of people could probably pick 12 things and think that's a complete overhaul, and they're right. So again, no one puts up their hand. So what about 6? Most people will still say no. Most people will still have their hand lowered. Some people might be able to get away with 6. So what about 3? Maybe a couple more people. Changing 3, again, 3 manageable things is potentially realistic. Most people don't pick the little things. They pick the big things that they can't sustain. So most people still keep their hand down. Fantastic. So why is starting with one thing unrealistic to you, but 12 things is? Right? So let's pick one thing that you know is important. We know more hydration is important, right? And it's something that only takes 30 seconds. Let's do what we can to pull from that list the simplest, easiest thing in the world. One thing, work on it relentlessly for 30 days. If you get it for 30 days straight, you have deposited so many coins into that I am this person bucket that bucket is now full, and you go, yes, I am a person who drinks more water. You no longer have to convince yourself. You are that person. This is who you are. Fantastic. 1 month down, let's pick one more thing for 30 days. By the end of the year, you have completely overhauled your life. You've done the thing you've tried to do numerous times again and again and again in the past, but now you've actually done it because you took the easiest, simplest things. So that's one way we can start completely overhauling our life in that way, is we pick with the simplest, easiest thing to pick, and we start there. The next thing is, and now I'm going to kind of talks about some studies and research because I really like this point, is Southern California, I think her name was Dr. Wood. She put on a study, 2 studies actually. One of them was called the popcorn study, and delicious sounding study, to be honest. And basically the way it worked was They got two groups of people. One of them identified as people who don't like to eat popcorn at the movie theater. Those people are weird to me. I can't relate. Then there's the people who say they do eat a lot of popcorn at the movie theater, and these are my people, right? But what they did is they took these people who identified in certain ways and they brewed two batches of popcorn. One of them was freshly buttery popcorn. They gave that to the people who don't eat popcorn. Then they took week-old, stale, non-buttered popcorn, and they gave that to the people who identify as people who do eat popcorn. And what they found was the people who do eat popcorn, even though they admitted that that stale, week-old popcorn was absolutely disgusting, they still ate almost the entire bag by the end of the movie. Weird, right? Then they did it again, but this time the only thing they changed was that if you're right-handed, you're probably holding the popcorn in your left hand, and it's an automatic thing. So all they did was get you to put bag of popcorn from one hand, hold it in your dominant hand. Now your brain has to rewire itself to start using the left hand, and that little bit of a change got people to made it so that they only ever ate about 1/4 of the bag before getting sick of it and stopping. That's pretty significant. And so that got them thinking some more. Okay, if that's all it took to get them to not eat as much popcorn was just switching which hands we use, how can we apply that to ourselves, to the day-to-day people that aren't going to the movie theater? This could be something as simple as switch hands that your fork is using. Now you have to think about it, go slower, and you have to actually be a lot more conscious and present. So that slows you down a bit. And just eating slower, we know can have tremendous benefits in terms of weight loss and overall health, stuff like that. She then put on another study. This one was the candy bowl study, which again, I like these studies. These sound really good. But basically they got 30 people in the workplace to have bowls of candy sitting on their desk. A week later, they calculated roughly how much of this candy was eaten on average. And it was about 83% of that candy bowl. And every day, those people who ate 83% on average of that candy bowl said they felt sick, lethargic. They had that afternoon crash. They weren't feeling good. And so the second week, the only thing they did was they took that bowl and put it in the drawer, closed it. It is that far away it is that much distance, just a couple inches. Now suddenly only 3% on average of that bowl was taken away, was eaten by the end of the day. They felt good. They felt refreshed because they got to dabble in the delicious little food that they wanted, but they didn't overindulge and they got to enjoy it. They still felt really good by the end of the week. And a fourth study, third study, and this will be the last one, and then I'll explain what they're getting at. Is they had, again, popcorn. God, I wish I was in these studies. Basically, they were all sitting at a table, and there was a bowl of popcorn, and on the other end of the table, there was a bowl of fruit. Everyone agreed that the popcorn is more tasty, but the fruit is probably the more healthy choice that they know they should be choosing. But because the popcorn was right in front of them, the fruit bowl goes untouched. Then the next week, again, they swapped the places. Now people start eating the fruit and they don't touch the popcorn. So what's the point of these three studies? The point of these three studies is they're talking about friction points. How do we increase the friction between you and the thing you don't want and you and the thing you do? Friction can be defined as distance, time, and effort. How much effort do you have to put in to get the thing? How much distance, how far away is it? And how long is it going to take you to get it? The idea is to reduce these things, reduce friction between you and the ideal future healthy self that you imagined, taking those habits one at a time. How do you reduce the time, distance, and effort between you and the thing you want, while simultaneously increasing the friction between you and the things you're trying to leave behind? How do we increase time, distance, and effort between you and the things you no longer want to be true about yourself, while reducing the time, distance, and effort between you and drinking more water, you trying to get those steps in, anything, whatever it is? How do we reduce the friction between you and the thing you don't want? And then how do we, sorry, other way around. I said it already. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, is understand what we don't want, understand what we do want, and then understand how do we increase the time, distance, and effort between you and the thing you don't want, while decreasing the effort between the thing you don't.
I love that. That's honestly, that's if anyone has like a pen and paper on them, I feel like if you could just write down the words distance, time, and effort, because sometimes, we'll vaguely say like, oh, well, if you want to break a habit, like make it harder to do, or make it easier to do a habit you want to start. But then we're like, what does that even mean? But if you can break it down to like, it's almost like prompts to be like, okay, this is the habit that I want to, that's not serving me anymore. And then just write down like time, distance, and effort, and be like, hey, how do I change these? And it like gives you such specific areas to work with, like with the water, or when you're making new habits, it's like, okay, decrease the distance, like, okay, put the water bottle on your bedside table. Decrease the effort, put a straw in it. And it's like, it gives you, now it's so much easier to find a solution because you have a specific obstacle that you're like trying to work with. I love those 3 words. It makes it just so much more like tangible.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as like, what's your favorite color? Get a water bottle of that color. Because if it's going to draw your eye to it, if it's out of sight, out of mind, right? That's the whole point of the candy bowl study. If it's out of sight, out of mind, you're less likely to reach it. So again, if we're trying to reduce the time, distance, and effort, in this case, effort or distance, is if your water bottle is beside you and it's your favorite color, you're more likely to be like, oh, that's pretty. Oh, hey, look, water, and then drink water.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's whatever you can do. And it could be something as simple as like, if like, oh, I want to start working out and I don't want to go to the gym. Okay, well, I can work out from home. Or I wanted to start stretching or yoga. You can just like, instead of tucking your yoga mat back into your closet, like tuck it in the corner of your living room and get like a bright pink. My favorite color is neon pink. If I got a bright neon pink yoga mat tucked in the corner, I'm going to see it and be like, oh, I should probably use that. Rather than just not seeing it because it's tucked away in a closet somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you agree with the kind of the statement of your environment matters more than your willpower?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. The way I look at it is willpower is very finite. It's like a muscle, right? And by the time it hits like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your willpower muscles start to deteriorate really fast. And so on average, just because the more decisions you have to make, the more willpower is involved. And so if you can set up your environment to, again, if you picture the person that you want to be, one of the things you could think of is, what does that person's home look like? What does their environment look like? Because chances are that person doesn't have to rely on willpower. Willpower is finite. It's kind of like motivation. It comes and goes. Motivation, it just isn't super reliable. It's good to get the ball rolling. Willpower can do a lot of things, but eventually you're going to get sick of making the decisions and you're going to fall back on your level of preparation. And that preparation comes from your environment. Using myself as an example, I grew up the kind of person where I would run into the closet or run into the pantry, and any snack food there was, I would devour it before my parents could catch me and reprimand me. Right. So I was very much a snacker. If there's something salty and crunchy in the house, it is in my mouth before I even realize it's there. And then I feel the guilt and then I feel the shame. Right. And so what my fiance has figured out is she just takes and if she ever buys snack food, because she gets away with snack food a lot more than I do, is she'll just take it and she just keeps it in her closet where I never go.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll never see it. And again, it's out of sight, out of mind. And I never, even though I know it's there, because I never go in there, it is not a part of my environment, my routine. I suddenly I'm not snacking.
Yeah, I think and it's great to realize that it's not coming from a position of lack or restriction. It's not that you can't have these things. You're just setting up your environment so that when you do choose to have them, it's an intentional choice and not just subconscious habit, mindless,
That conscious choice thing is actually so much, because sometimes when people eat the food, they get uncomfortable, they get stressed, they get emotional, they hate themselves. Why can't I do this? Why this is so hard? Why am I such a failure? But this happened with a client of mine somewhat recently, but essentially she came to me and she was very much a nighttime snacker with chocolate. That was her thing. If she was stressed in any way, shape, or form, which she was very much, she would devour chocolate. And one day during one of our check-in calls, we do it over Zoom. She just happened to have the camera lined up, and I thought it was really funny. About 6 weeks after Easter, and I could see the chocolate bunny on top, like above her fridge in the background, and I was like, "Hey, what's that?" And she was like, "Oh, it's a chocolate Easter bunny. It's just sitting there." I was like, "Hold on, that was 6 weeks ago, and you haven't eaten it." And she's like, like freaked out because she was so excited because she just hadn't even put it together that she didn't devour the chocolate. And we were kind of just having the conversation. It's like sometimes deciding to eat the thing is also a win. We need to understand when that context arrives, because I think a lot of the times people think that if I eat the thing, I am bad.
Mhm.
But in reality, we know those foods make us feel good. That's why we crave them. That's why when we're stressed, we go to those foods. So as long as we can do it intentionally and not as a reaction, because if we are, as human beings, we are emotional creatures, go figure. And a lot of the times we react based on the emotions that we're feeling. But if you manage to stop and go, hold on, do I actually want this? Will eating this actually serve me right now? And if the answer is no, well, then now you have the choice to not do it. Now it's much easier said than done. We are reactionary creatures, right? But if you can stop yourself and ask yourself that question, and the answer is no, then you're like, oh, got it. I'm responding to stress. I should probably avoid it. But if the answer to that question is yes, I feel like hot garbage right now, and eating that chocolate would actually make me feel absolutely amazing, it's still a win because it was a conscious choice, not an unconscious reaction.
Mhm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I honestly think so much self-confidence just comes from following through on your word and living a purposeful life versus feeling like you're victim to all the like having no control at all. So just knowing that like you're in the driver's seat for your
Mhm,
choices, regardless of what they are, makes a huge
mhm.
difference on your quality of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we as human beings, again, we are reactionary creatures, but we are the only creatures on this planet who have the ability to stop and assess the situation.
Hmm.
So we have that power. It's not always easy because again, in the moment, say like two siblings and your dog just passed away and you just got dumped. I guarantee you stress levels are through the roof, and you should and you're probably going to want to eat that ice cream. It's probably going to make you feel better, and it's probably worth it in that moment. But at the same time, if you can stop and be like, you know what? Yes, I'm in this awful situation, but I know that if I eat this entire liter tub of ice cream, I'm going to feel even worse tomorrow because I'm also lactose intolerant. I should probably not do that. That's also a win. But also, if you then assess that situation and go, no, eating that thing is definitely what's best for me right now. I am a mess. I need it.
And finding those differences of like in the amounts that you can enjoy the
Yeah.
experience without the negative impacts of feeling like garbage afterwards. So there's so much different context and it changes with every different decision, but just realizing that you can pause and be like, okay, what's right in this moment, and that'll change. There's not one right answer for every single moment. But I think there's so much. I feel like I could talk about it forever, but I do want to open up the floor just in case a couple of these peeps have like any questions, or even, if you guys listening have like a certain habit that you're looking to like want to make or break, and you're like, ooh, do you have any insights or ideas of how to increase or decrease friction? Like, know that this is the guy to ask, and the floor is yours if there's anything that's coming up that you want to ask. I know it's a shy thing too. And if you think of something after, you can ask me and I'll bring it forward to him so he can help you out.
Absolutely. If anybody ever has any questions that they bring to you about this conversation, or they just want to pick my brain, more than happy if you just send me the like whatever questions as well after the call, and then I'll just make a video response, give it to you so you can post it in the group and whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have no problems doing that as well, because
I love that.
This is my favorite thing. Like my three favorite things like in the world is coaching, good conversations, and learning. And doing things like this gives me an opportunity to do all three. So
oh yeah, it's such a win. So I want to make sure that everyone listening and whoever's watching the replay like know that you'll have that platform. And also where can they find you to like hear more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm based on Instagram. I am on TikTok, but I kind of get annoyed of video only. So I'm like, everything that's on there is also on my Instagram, but there's also more on my Instagram. So that's just rs.coachchris. RS just stands for Revitalized Systems, Coach Chris, and that's where you can find me. That's where you can find me on the social media. My name is also Chris Hughes. It's just a picture of me with my fiance. So if you want to just like reach out, you're more than happy to answer any questions at any point, shape, or form. I also have a podcast called The Vitality Life. Basically all of my live trainings in my group are also going on there. And then also all my conversations with really cool people go on there. And again, because I live in a tiny little town, little retirement town on a tiny little island in West Coast Canada. I'm not really surrounded by a lot of people where I get to talk to people. So I'm like, how can I convince other people that are way smarter than I am to actually talk to me? I'll start a podcast, because if I reach out to somebody like Lane Norton, who's like a titan in this industry, and be like, "Hi, do you want to come live into my Facebook group?" He'll be like, "No, get the fuck out of here." Or I can be like, "Or how about my podcast?" And he was like, "Ask me again every 2 weeks, and eventually I'll be able to say yes."
Yeah, perfect. So that's good to know that there'll be great information to find on your podcast and then on your Instagram. So that's sweet there. I'm sure it won't be the last time that they'll hear and see you. So, from kind of all of us too, thanks for sharing your time here. And there's lots of nuggets that we can take from that. And I'm super excited to use those tools, especially the distance, time, and effort for increase and decreasing like friction. And super appreciate your like time for hopping on. So
yeah, no worries.
Thank you. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon. But if any other questions come up, I'll make sure to pass them along to you.
Sounds good.
Sweet. Well, thank you. I can stop the recording.